Good morning. So, today it's a rainy Saturday morning in Switzerland. So basically, the only thing that I have planned, maybe I will go for some downhill in the afternoon, let's see. But so far the only thing I've planned is cleaning the house or cleaning my apartment. And of course I'm procrastinating this because, yeah, this is not something that I really want to do. So yeah, I thought like why not make a small stream? So maybe I will stream twice today. Let's see. But yesterday we basically looked at the control flow. So we were exploring in Angular the ngIf, the ngIfElse syntax, also the switch case syntax, and then also the for loops with the defaults. If you have missed that, go ahead, check out my YouTube channel. You can find the stream recording there. And today we want to check out the defer flow that is coming. So what we will do is, again, we will go to my private directory and npx npx add Angular CLI next. So we will use Angular CLI next. And let's just call it defer it. I think that's good. And this should use the Angular CLI version 17 something, because now you can see it already asks us if we want SSR out of the box. So that's already Angular CLI 17, because SSR out of the box was not there like in previous versions. So I'm not sure if we will experiment with SSR, probably for the moment not. But yeah, it's interesting that Angular, I think, what is the default there on the SSR? I don't remember what the default was, but I would imagine the default is no. Because it would be interesting if they say by default, like out of the box, everything's just, yeah, SSR. So in the meantime, we can go ahead to GitHub and we can create a repository, your profile. Repositories, I have 162 repositories, oh my god. Defer it, let's make that a public one. And then usually what I do is, since we want to push an existing one, I copy out this snippet down here. So then it's initialized, so we change directory in here and we push a main branch directly up. So that's good. So now if we basically run this, we should see something. We would also want to open this in an IDE. That was documents code, private, defer it, right? Okay, so we should have a project up and running. I would say so. That's our deferred project. Wow. It's very, very bright, so we will change that. Yeah, we will change that. So let's first go to styles. Let's add a body tag, and then we say because we will do like simple things, but the background color, let's just go with that. I don't know. Usually, I always try to do the background color of my ID theme, because that's the theme I created myself, and I really love this theme because did it take it? Yeah. Because I think it's not too hard on the eyes. It's very cool. So color white, and then basically it looks like this. Of course, we get rid of the default content and just say here defer playground, so something like this, right? And now we want to try out the new defer syntax, so let's see. So in the RFC, Angular uses, let's say we have a component. Let's maybe quickly do, let's let's just call this child component.ts. I mean, it wouldn't even need to be a child, but I'm just curious about the lifecycle hooks, how they are invoked. No, just do like h2 child, something like this, and then just isn't it here? I recently again switched my keyboard, so therefore I'm mistyping sometimes. Okay, so standalone true. I really like standalone, I have to say. Initially I was pretty skeptical, but now I have to say I'm a big fan of standalones. Okay, so we have our child component here. Let's also use it in the template, right? So let's say here we display the child, something like this. So yeah, the child is displayed, right? Let's maybe bump the font size here a bit to 175. And now what we're going to do inside our app component, we will use add defer. I think that's how Angular now has the syntax. I've never tried this feature. So usually what you do based on how I understood the RFC is, now we see that we load the child, but I'm not sure if we see anything different inside the network request. Like the mic stand is in the way. What is this chunk? This chunk is the child component, right? I guess if we remove the defer, we don't have that. So we have chunks, right? But I think the child component is just loaded, like not separately. So I guess that's the difference. And it reminds me a bit of the Astro Islands. So now, what we can do here is we can go ahead and use on and when triggers. So basically, when specifies a condition. So let's quickly try, okay, let's maybe make different examples. So let's do a new folder like examples, something like that. And inside here we call it timer example.component.ts. And also our child, maybe the child we move into a directory share. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's take our child, because that's basically kind of like a template. So how do we call this? Timer example. And now what we want to have here is just like a timer, which is, let's just do like an off through pipe. I think we could also have done like just timer, but let's say 3 seconds. Maybe 3 is too much. Let's take 2. Something like this. And now we say timer example. Let's do this as an H1. And now we say add defer. Probably we have to import the child here as well. So child component. And then inside here, yeah, exactly, we do. No, we don't want to have it like this, because that's then just an ng if, but that's not like deferring the loading. So AI, not like this. So we have our child, and here, I guess it's like this. We say timer async. Maybe. I don't know if we have to start with false, I don't think so. And then probably we have to import the async async pipe. As you can see, the IDE support is not yet there because this is also some brand new feature. And then we, how did we call it? Timer? Didn't we call it timer example? We should have called it. But child component has to be imported now. Makes sense. Let's add some spacing here. Okay, now we need to register our timer example component. Right, like this. Okay, cool. And now inside our app component, we want to have timer example. So we already get the compilation error. Unrecognized trigger. Inputs must be an array of components. Okay, so we have a bunch of errors inside our app component. Something's wrong. I don't see what is wrong here. I mean, okay, now we only get like the specific error, so this timer async. So I think what we are missing is the when condition, right? Because I think the syntax here is different. It's not like this. I think it's when, and then I would expect that around the when you have some brackets. Maybe the when comes inside here. So I'm still, yeah, that looks better. So let's see again. Let's see again what is happening here. So let's move the console here. Let's clear that. So we get that. We clear everything. Timer example. And now you see, maybe we have to go with more than 2 seconds. Let's go with 5 because I'm too slow. So now we load the stuff. We don't have anything. And once our condition becomes true, we can see how we load the child component chunk. We deferred that loading, so the chunk is already prefetched, it seems like, because that's not the chunk. I guess by default it just prefetches when the browser is idle or something. So basically, just checking the swap. So basically with when we can have a condition, but we can also have an on interaction. So we did that when condition case. Okay, I'm just checking. Timer 5 seconds. Is this? So in the RFC they have something like this even. When then they have timer 5 seconds. I mean, let's see. So this shouldn't be using our stuff here. Does this work? I don't think this compiles. Yeah, because sometimes they have some built-in stuff. And I think so. Let's see, there's also, so that's basically the timer example. Let's make like a new example where we call it when and on that example. Maybe I should do, because this is a bit annoying, when and on an example, and then of course we have to say here when and on, and we have to register this inside our app component, of course, the imports array, And then inside our app component HTML, we will now use when and on example. Good. And let's jump back. So what do we want to do here? So we do the same with our timer, but additionally we say a on, and I'm not sure how the syntax here is. I think it's on click, and then on click on what? So let's even see if this compiles. Doesn't, because the on so let's see. Okay. So this is the exact same example as the previous one that we had. But let me also bring over the RFC, because in the RFC, let's go a bit bigger here. So this should be good. So in the RFC they have on interaction, and now how do you specify those interactions? This is somewhere Angular defer. Or maybe I should speak of defer loading. That's the RFC. That's basically Manfred's block, but he still has the old syntax, so that was still earlier day because they now changed it to the add. But on interaction, but what is interaction? I mean, this is just like how it will look like, but just curious how I can specify the interaction itself. So let's see, when timer async, defer, or let's maybe just try like on click. Does this even work? No, it doesn't compile. Or is it on interaction? Is it on interaction? Let's see. How can we figure that out? Because, right, we are trying something that is, it will be documented once it's out. But then I don't see how for loading, calendar component. I mean, we can first try this placeholder block. There I'm also curious, but and then we will come back, because I'm not sure if the reason why I want to try out the placeholder block first is because somewhere I read that the interaction basically is on the placeholder block. So if there is no placeholder block, but still it doesn't explain why it doesn't compile. So let's take again our timer example, just rename that to placeholder example, then of course here placeholder example component, and then we say, how did they specify it after? I would expect that you say add placeholder, and here we just do like loading. That's what I would expect. It's just a guess. So placeholder example, it does compile, so that's good. So we have loading and then child. So the placeholder works. Now, still, the question is the when and or the on trigger. How do we do that? Yeah, alternatively you can use both when and on interaction. And somewhere there is even okay, let's go like one after the other, because I think somewhere here there is, so we have also loading blocks and error blocks. I still don't see how the loading and the placeholder differs, but we will explore that. On interaction again, on interaction, prefetch. Oh, they also have prefetch mechanism, that makes sense. Timeout, that's what I've tried previously. Trigger types, but that's for prefetch. Okay, there's a lot, right? There's a lot, and we will cover that all, but we are still at the beginning with this on trigger, and I still don't know. Server-side rendering behavior, defer, potential. I thought the interaction is like a click event or something. One condition on interaction. Let's search for interaction. Interaction means click, focus, touch, and input events like key down, blur, etc. Yes, but how? How do you specify that? That's my question. Like, so I can say defer on see, it doesn't. Plugging Angular compiler. When an on example. So maybe we have to check. Maybe we have to go and check the Angular sources. Let's see. Is there somewhere a PR mark link to this? Yeah. On specifies the declarative trigger condition. Trigger type section. But I think we tried that. Was it on viewport? Doesn't work. So this doesn't compile like whatever. Is it on interaction, comma? What do they have there? They have sorry. Timer 5 seconds, I think. Yeah. And then no. Now we get a different error. Now we get interaction trigger with no parameters can only be placed on a defer that has a placeholder block. Interaction trigger. Okay, let's see. So let's go ahead and add a placeholder block, which is the loading block. Oh. Let's see now. Now this compiles. This compiles, and that's what I meant with basically with the placeholder, because I guess you need to be able to interact somewhere. Placeholder. Let's see if we can then also make that. So we have the placeholder, and now 5 seconds pass because we use the timer, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the child gets loaded. But can we also, I mean, that's already a cool example. We call this, maybe let's just, so that we have a complete repository, let's just call this a, let's just rename this to on timer. Rename file, yes. And then also here, we rename this to on timer example. On timer example component, and we don't need that. Good. I think something broke for sure, like, I'm not so optimistic that the refactoring tools always work. But now we will do like, I want to do the same with a click. Let's maybe do a new directory on, where we do the on stuff, and then a when trigger, and then maybe we combine them. New file on click sample.component.ts, and we paste that content here. We say this is now click. Of course, we do it like this. On click example. So on click, child component. Okay, something, as I said, the refactoring probably broke something. But what exactly? I'm gonna run start. Maybe also it hung up here. Child component async pipe. On click example component. Yeah, because the path is not correct. Like, this has to be like this, and I guess in the on timer it's already good. Good. So we have a placeholder, which is the placeholder, and we want to say on interaction click. Unrecognized trigger type. Maybe this has to be like this. Okay, let's again go through the docs, because we have seen that we do where is it? What was that? On interaction. Multiple event triggers would be supported at once, for example, on interaction timer. So that's then basically so that, let's go again quickly back to our previous example, the on timer example. Can we render that? No, because we broke something here. Let's just quickly. I mean, let's just uncomment this. Good. So what it's saying is we have the 5 seconds. Yeah, where the child gets loaded, but also, you see, it also gets loaded if we somehow interact with that. So I guess we cannot specify the click event. So that would be on timer. Let's maybe duplicate that, because one would be on timer and on timer and interaction. So that would be the on timer and interaction example component. Something like this, because those has multiple triggers, and this we would just on timer example, and then we go away with this. And now, if you rerun this, broke something again. On click example. What? Did we uncomment that? I think we did. Why did we do that? So now we can interact with the placeholder, but nothing happens, right? Only the 5-second trigger. So now what I want to do is this on click example. So we will go again to our app component. So I guess then it's just on interaction. Boom. It's really just on interaction. And I guess the on interaction can be also something like, maybe if this wouldn't be like a placeholder. So let's say this placeholder is an input. Right? So it should be focusable. So what I can do is this. I thought this is also an interaction. And once you start clicking, that's then the interaction. So basically, focus itself doesn't count as an interaction, but an example would be an interaction on viewport. We will have series of predefined event triggers. Yeah, okay. So those, you cannot go with your click event or whatever, you have to go with the predefined ones. Okay, so somewhere here is a section where they describe the trigger types. Idle interaction means click focus. Focus doesn't really work, I think, or doesn't yet, because you see, that for me is a focus. So I'm now focused in the input group or the input element. I think that's maybe something we could report as a bug. Touch and input events, yeah, that makes sense. So I think also if I click in here, then it works, yes. Yes, that works. So, but basically here, this doesn't work. So that's something we could report. We will report that. Key down blur, that all makes sense. Then immediate triggers the deferred load immediately. Yeah, so that's basically just like a set timeout, kinda. Then we have a timer, hover. Let's do a hover example. Basically, this is not really on click. This is more like on interaction example, I would say so. Yes. On interaction example, so let's copy paste that. What did we say? On hover example. So basically on hover example, on hover example component. Good, we take the hover example component, we put it here, we put it there, and we say on hover example, right? And now what we do is inside our on hover example, we say on hover, and everything works. Nice. So that's pretty cool, and I also want to see how the chunk looks like, because I still think that this is prefetched, because we fetch the main, we fetch Angular platforms, whatever, and then there are some chunks, and I would expect that here somewhere is already our child component. I don't know. Is it somewhere here? Well, let's see what the chunk fetches. What is this chunk? That's child component, you see. I guess that's already prefetched. And then just like you defer the loading, because if we hover, we can see how the chunk comes, but it just imports from the chunk that is already there, I think. And I'm not sure if that's really like the lazy loaded, because I think it's still prefetched. But that's something we will cover in the next section. So idle will trigger when deferred loading once the browser has reached an idle state, okay? I think that's the default. Yeah, this is the default behavior with the defer block, cool. Interaction, immediate. Yeah, I think that's a bit before idle. Then the timer we have the hover and viewport. So this is basically when it enters, right? So let's also do a viewport example. The viewport will be a bit more interesting, I guess. Viewport example. Let's call this viewport example. Viewport example component, right? And now let's use that component again inside our app component. Boom. And then we go with viewport example. So, yeah, so that's still the same example. Maybe we should also change. Sorry for that. On timer, that would be on timer and interaction. And now this is the viewport. On viewport. So we say on viewport. On viewport. And now what we want to do is we want to add a div. And basically this div will take up like the whole page. So let's say huge. So the huge div will have like a background of blue, and it will have a height of, I don't know, 5,000 pixels, and the width will be 50% of the view width, something like this. So this is the viewport example now with our big div, and we can see that nothing happens now. Like still the child get loaded, but now we scroll, maybe 5,000 was too much. Let's go a bit smaller. Let's go with 2,000 pixels, especially if we are zoomed in. So we scroll, again we clean the log. And now you see how the chunk got loaded because the child came into the viewport. So it's pretty cool actually, I have to say, but it reminds me a bit of Astro. Astro has this Astro Island. And I can already see how this could be pretty cool, maybe also with hydration then, that you can say basically parts of your app is still somehow hydrated. Okay, good, so let's go further in the RFC. What else do they have as triggers? Where were we? So we have idle, interaction, timer, hover, viewport. Okay, those are the triggers. When is just a condition. I think when is just used for custom conditions. I mean, you could always build your own custom condition. Yeah, imperative condition in form of the expression returns a boolean. Yeah, basically like a if. Aha, so it's basically one-time loading. So if you switch back to false, then basically it doesn't yeah, it doesn't switch back if the content should be dynamically rendered, and if condition should be used. Yeah, so then just use ngIf. Okay, what I wanted to see is we already covered the placeholder blocks, I think. Maybe we have to restructure that a bit. Yeah, let's do like directory placeholder. And that would be like a new directory when. I think that makes it more, gives it a bit of structure. Now loading blocks. So let's try loading. And also what I want to, before we do that, I still want to try one of the examples, like let's take the on hover for example. So let's use that. I can go here. On hover example. So this is our example. Once we hover, component gets loaded. Nice. So what I now want to try is basically I want to inspect the lifecycle hooks of the child component. So let's say we have a implements on changes, on init, after view init. Yeah, I think that those are the, maybe do check. Those are the most interesting ones. So implement all of them. Yeah, simple changes we have to import. And then we say console log child component here. This will be the oh my god. Now and John changes. And John in it, right? And maybe I'm also interested in a constructor call. AI. Child component constructor. Makes sense. I won't need that. Something like that. So, I mean, let's see. Quickly I have to fix my keyboard sometimes because I'm using the Moonlander, right? Like to the split keyboard. And then sometimes here on the side there are these handles and they sometimes fall over, which is a bit annoying. Okay, good, but we have that. And now let's inspect how the logs look like. So I would expect that nothing, of course, gets rendered, right? Nothing. And now you come, and then boom, all the life cycles get called. And from there, the component is there. So that's actually not surprising. So, okay, good. Now, where were we? We were with the loading. Loading, and basically what we want to do is copy this new file loading component.ts and we paste it, and I want to do basically something else. I want to say, like, why not use the defer syntax at all? Why instead of the RxJS syntax? So we have the loading and we say defer on timer and we say 5 seconds. That should basically be the same. And here we say loading. Then inside our app component, we just use the loading example. And we probably have to register it. Loading example component. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the child comes, but where was our loading? The placeholder, basically, our diff. What if I add here another add placeholder? Placeholder. So we see the placeholder appearing, but we don't get the loading, so there must be something that we're missing. The loading block defines content that should be displayed while the defer block is fetching dependencies in order to render its defer template. Is this dependencies of the loading? Yeah, but I think there's also this prefetch. I'm not sure if it has to do with that. There may be desire to separate the deferred loading action from the content rendering action. For example, users may want to prefetch. I'm not sure if this is the default. In this case, when associated with default controls, a prefetch. This enables more advanced behaviors. Yeah, prefetch on idle. That's basically switching prefetch when to false does not hide the content. Aha. So then prefetch basically also can be combined. Can we prefetch? Let's see. So we go here with the timer. Right, now we do, was it like this? Yeah. Prefetch when false. So basically we want to disable the prefetch. So it seems to be valid, but still we get the placeholder. But now, okay, we are doing multiple things at the same time. But let's see, so we prefetch, and now let's see what we load. But still we load that chunk here. Okay, I don't think it's prefetched even in the previous example. What if we do prefetch when idle? Nah, that doesn't work. It's not when idle, it's on idle. You see, okay, so it was really prefetched always, but now basically what we see is the difference is now we already fetch here our chunk. We already fetch it, and then later, so let's do that again, we fetch the chunk, we delete the lock, and then it's already there. So, okay, we already prefetched. So that would be a prefetch example. But the question is now, still, that loading, why do we never get the loading template? So let's say we get rid again of the placeholder, we never see the loading template. I think the difference is that you can interact with the loading, with the placeholder template, but not with the loading template. But I still want to see how loading blocks. The loading block defines content that should be displayed by the defer block is fetching dependencies. Similar to the placeholder, this block is optional. Did I do something wrong? I mean, if this is placeholder, then it will work. Yeah, then we see the loading. But if it's loading, it doesn't. I think I'm missing here something. Loading the calendar. Yeah, so the loading block, I don't know how I can get that to work. I mean, maybe we can also do like a button. So let's see. Because loading, when using the loading block, you can specify an after condition. Aha. You can also specify an after, because it loads it. Okay, so that's not the placeholder that is displayed really like while it's loading. What if we just throttle the network settings somehow? Like we say we have a very slow 3G. Let's see. So we would go here. And now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all the chunk would get loaded, right? So that's even the initial load, so that's so slow now. Now we should soon see how like our page gets constructed. Look here how everything is like super slow. It takes like 25 milliseconds. 25 seconds, not 25 milliseconds. 25 seconds. Oh my god, I didn't expect it to be that slow. So now we see how our page gets rendered. Now the timer starts after 5 seconds. We start loading the chunk. But the chunk was still fast, but you could see this the loading, right? You could see it. Oh my god, yeah, this goes forever again, but now watch here the loading here. So we will see it. Slow, it's slow. Okay, now check here. 5 seconds, loading, boom, here it is, and then the child component comes. So let's switch that back, but that basically means that we see the loading, no throttling. So now, what was it written here about an after condition, which takes a duration? This allows users to specify a minimum duration of time to wait before showing the loading template. The loading template will not be shown if the request took less time than the specified duration, yeah. So that's basically you give it a minimum duration and then you show the loading, but for us it's the other case. Yeah, okay. Good, we can see it. We can see how this gets loaded. I mean, what if we just would say like new file child huge child component.ts, and then we say again this is a component standalone through selector huge child. We do a template. Let's do inline, yeah, still. Huge child component. Then now we will use we will use vim macros. How about that? So let's say we have h1 this, like Real Madrid is the best team because they are. So okay, good. Now we would say we want to double point and copy that, right? And now we can say QA, and how was it again? Q at A, so we record at A, we just copy that, and then we basically Q again. And now if we do add A, wasn't it like that? I thought it was like that. Q at A. How is it again going with the vim macros? Let's see. Q. To enter a macro, type Q and then A. Stop recording. I think it's just Q. So again, Q. Are we now recording? Oh shit, I forgot to register it. QA. I don't think I'm recording. No, I'm not. I mean, to enter a macro, type Q. So I type Q. Then let's say we record at A, but that already takes it like this. I'm not sure. Is this something that is like, sorry for that, I'm just test.js, whatever. So we are in nvim land. I'm not sure if it's just Q, A, recording. You see now there at the bottom, like recording at A. And now I basically record. I stop the recording. And then, isn't this the at? Oh, I mistyped on my keyboard. Oh my god, I mistyped on the keyboard. So then we can basically say Q at A, we record, then we stop. And now, what? So I'm struggling with the emulated Vim. So Q at D, somehow this works better. Then we stop the recording at D, yeah, there it is. I don't know why it didn't work with A. Whatever. So let's say we want to do like 1,000 times Real Madrid is the best. So we do like 1,000 at D. And now the macro is executing. So that's what I wanted to do, right? So now we are on line. Okay, I missed like, let's again do 1,000 at D. Macro execution, and now we should be like around 1,000 lines or something. I'm just curious if I can get a component that big that it takes longer to load. And I think either it's not if this can be optimized, otherwise we will add some ngif expressions so that we really get like IV expressions out of the box. So because that maybe makes it bigger. But this should already be enough, I would say, because the amount of data that has to be loaded is like much bigger. Okay, here we are, 1113 lines, and now let's go to our loading template. And we don't load this, we load the huge child. What? Huge child. Still started building. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, did you see, like, now at least what we got is like a short flickering of loading. It was very short, so there we could now use that after, basically. So yeah, it still would have to be bigger. So basically this is really quick. So this we could say minimum. What is minimum? The minimum after 100 milliseconds we show it. You can specify minimum condition, which also this allows user to specify. So basically, even if we go with our normal child, can we say here loading minimum 2 seconds, whatever. Wrong syntax. Yeah, no, syntax is correct, but the child is not imported. This sounds wrong, like. So now 5 seconds, and now we see loading for like 2 seconds. Okay, so with the min we can basically control how long we want to display the spinner. With the mag, what was the other property? After, we can control when the spinner should be shown. Then error blocks represent the UI that should be rendered when deferred loading fail. How can we make that fail? That's a question. Yeah, we can do that, like somehow new. But then now basically also I want to have this example, so that's loading, and I want to have loading with loading placeholder or loading with placeholder. And what I would expect is we first see the placeholder, and then we can even switch, we can even add some cool stuff. Loading placeholder. Loading with placeholder. Okay, we have that. Loading with placeholder component, so we have it here. And now basically we go add placeholder, and this would be like placeholder, and then the brackets closed. Loading with placeholder. Loading placeholder component. Now we see the placeholder. Then once after 5 seconds, it starts loading, and then boom, the content arrives. And of course here we could basically use the placeholder to, I think I already see like quite some cool features. So here we can see, we would say on hover, like defer on hover. Now the placeholder is there. Yeah, we hovered it. The placeholder is there, and here we say loading and our example, something like that. Placeholder, boom, loading, zack. Cool. Let's also add now a new file loading error.
I just wanna be a damn girlfriend. What I gotta
Loading
do to make
error.
you face the truth? You didn't act like a friend that night. Maybe that's why it felt so right. Do I really need to spell it out for you? So why you trying
Loading
to hide your
error placeholder example. So we still use the placeholder. I usually would go something like this at error and then loading error placeholder example. Something like this. So, okay, placeholder reload, and now we have it. But let's say we now have the page loaded, right? And now we go and we say we are basically offline. So now we hover, we still get the loading, but now we get the error. Maybe error shouldn't be like 3 dots. But loading placeholder, that shouldn't be 3 dots. That should be error, something like that. And then we go back to no throttling. So cool. Good. So those are the error blocks. Prefetching we already kinda had. There may be a desired separate deferred loading action.
What's it gonna be? You gotta give me something. What's it gonna be?
Can we also prefetch on click? I don't think that makes sense. I mean, why would no? That doesn't make any sense at all. Prefetch on idle. Timeouts. What defer blocks provide an API for developers to configure timeouts. Aha. So we can say defer that and timeout. I mean, can we also basically do like a new loading timeout component .ts, which is basically like this one. Let's see. Timeout. Oh. We did a lot of examples, I see, huh? Loading timeout example, nice. So we have that with the 2 seconds, but now it works. But let's say in our example, or how was the API? So what I want to do is defer on hover, timeout 1 second. So let's say we want to display the loading spinner for 2 seconds. I'm not sure how this behaves. So let's go timeout 1 second is wrong. Defer, maybe this doesn't come here. Maybe this has to be placed here in front, maybe. Still not. Okay. defer timeout. Placeholder block can only be used after a defer block. Yeah, but I think that's because he doesn't recognize the timeout. Yeah. So, what did I do here? Defer timeout? Doesn't work. No, without the brackets. So they say defer timeout. That provide an API. Not sure. I don't think that this works somehow. Or like
about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action. What we can
yeah.
live with no distractions. We'll get
Yeah, I don't know. Like this timeout block, I don't know. But the error we have the prefetch stuff with the trigger types covered. Yeah. Defer. Yeah, so this is visible in the viewport we have. When another element becomes visible in a viewport using the local ref. Oh, wow. So can we, let's do again our viewport example. So let's say we do a on viewport reference example component. So I will quickly grab something small to eat. I'm coming right back.
Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run. This is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights up. Died with my own doubts.
Okay, so again we have this, but let's say we basically on top of our huge diff, we want to defer the child loading. But we want to do it based on some element down the page. So this would be our input element. And then here we would say, does this work? Reference example.
We collide, we break down.
So we viewport reference example.
To our doubts. Faces filled
So this works.
with sadness.
Let's see to defer it. So we see that we are on viewport, nothing is loaded, right? Now we scroll down. Now our input comes into play, we load the chunk. That should be up here, our child, right? So that's pretty cool. I think it uses the intersection observer behind the scenes. Now this is an interesting section, server-side rendering. When rendering an application on the server, defer blocks always render their placeholder, or nothing. Okay. Triggers are ignored, that's good. Yeah, so basically, currently you don't render anything, but it would be cool if you can then basically have it like this. So partial hydration, so that basically server-side rendered content, you can still render it because currently you don't load anything, right? There's no HTML render, but basically you could have components which are dehydrated and you don't want to hydrate them, or is now an SSR like, yeah, because they render their placeholder. With partial, so our roadmap support partial hydration. Yeah, with partial hydration enabled, deferred content could be server rendered and then left dehydrated, yes, until triggering conditions are met. So basically you ship the HTML, but then once a condition met in the browser, you basically reload the JavaScript and hydrate the component. I think that would be cool. I think that goes in the direction of Astro. Yeah. Oh, content projection. I mean, that would maybe be a cool example for us to try. Some content projection. That would be some advanced stuff. Like, let's do that. Let's maybe commit those examples. Feature add examples. Storage in main. Yeah, there it goes. Good. So let's do a content projection example because there are, well, some interesting cases. Content projection. New file. Content projection. Did we call it minus example? I think we did. Okay, cool. So now, what does this component do? So we have a content projection example. And now the first thing that we need is a new file. I don't know another name. I accept ng component. Whatever component of TS. And that's basically a add component, which is pretty similar or pretty simple. Standalone true. Selector, I accept ng content. Template, please. No, wrong. Yeah. Now here we go. ng content. What else do we need? I think that's it. And something like this. I accept ng content. Maybe we do the same with ng template because there's a difference. So we do like one with file I accept ng template. Right, because the difference is with ng contents, like the lifecycle hooks still belong to the parent, but with ng template it's different. So ng template outlet, and what we can get here is a input, and we get a template, which is a template ref, something like that. I mean, let's do it like this, and then maybe we specify required true. I really like required inputs. That's a cool feature. Good. So we have those two components ready. Now we do the content projection example. So we defer. The first thing we need is we still need our child component. I accept ng content component, which is some other component we throw into the mix. And then let's just go with that. And we say timer 5 seconds. I find the 5 seconds pretty cool. Something like this. Now, of course, inside, we basically have to do that, and we have to register it here. Can we call it content projection example? No.
I can feel my body cold against the concrete, but I can't seem to get enough. My mind is fixed on what it wants.
Something like this.
You beat me, looks can be deceiving. Let you get the best of me, in bed with my worst enemy.
We don't run anymore.
It's a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a
Hey Ilber, hi again. How is it going?
This is a no-go, I just
Oh.
can't take hold. This is a danger zone. Back up
So, yeah, we see that we have the ng content, so we project. We don't project anything at the moment. So we still have to do I accept ng content, which is this component. Now, the child gets rendered, yes, and maybe inside our I accept ng content so that we just see it. Could be still like ng content. Now we see ng content at the child. But what I want to see is the component lifecycle loops. So let's go.
moving in slow motion, trying to control my thoughts, but I can't
I mean, that looks all good, right? That looks good. So what did they say? Dependencies of the content projection. So yeah, it's not rendered, but it's also not really deferred. So I would say that our content project... No, but... both things are loaded, like... both chunks are loaded. I'm not sure if this is true what they are saying there. Like... we load the chunk, but then also... this is I accept entry content component, right? So this is the component. So that's cool. If your user writes, yeah, I think we are almost. I tried yesterday add for loop, products async, empty, no data yet. And this was first showing that yeah, makes sense. But for like your products were sync or like async, right? Were they delayed? So for example, the products were either just like off or from, depends on what you want to use, but so basically off and then an array. Or did you also have something like 5 delay or real network request? Async. Yeah. Then I guess it makes sense because you subscribe with the async pipe, and then the async pipe returns null, which I then think causes the render of the empty template. And I know you say, and this was first showing the empty content. I mean, let's quickly see. Let's do. I'm now curious. What do we do? Example the component, and now let's see. So we come here. This one. Add component. Standalone true, selector. Let's call it empty example template. Let's just call it example component, all good. So we add it here, and then inside our app component we go with, how do we call it? Empty example. Yeah, we call it empty example. And inside here you said you have a list and then add 4. And basically you do product of products, async, and then inside here a list item with whatever product, and then we say add empty then we need products, somehow today we go with 5 seconds, whatever. Product. Yeah. Pro. Still not. importing the async pipe, right? So now we go. Or should? Still not. Makes sense. So you see how completely lost I am without the IDE support. Now, so we have no product, and then product 1, 2. So this is basically how I would have expected it. Is this also what you experienced, or? This gave me a fake idea. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that. That empty will wait for async, No, I think the problem is just that the async initially returns null. And I think that's just the problem here. But, I mean, what if we would add here a start with, but this is probably also then interpreted as empty. No products, yes. But if we would start with something like this, then restart empty. Yeah, so probably you need, depends on what you want to do. That's also what I yesterday on stream covered. Like usually you will anyway need the if, because you don't want, for example, in this example you probably don't want to have an unordered list and then display one list item in there. So probably you anyway want to display like another template, other kind of template, like some card or something, like some placeholder or whatever. And therefore I think we will need the if check anyway. So, and yeah, I think that defer here could make really sense, especially if we start with hydration. I see it going into the direction of Astro Islands. Like, if you ever checked, Astro has these islands where you can basically say, okay, I have parts of my framework that are hydrated, parts that are not hydrated. And then you can say on interaction, please start hydrating. So on client load or even on hover or stuff, you can then basically, there are different triggers, but you can say I have my React component or my Angular component, and you start hydrating once you hover over it and you start loading it then. So thanks for demoing it. Sure, no problem. Like, always happy to do some live stuff, exploring live things, and I think that's fun. Because anyway, most of the stuff I do here on stream is also live, so I rarely prepare stuff, right? Usually the streams are an advantage to just... Also yesterday you saw the control flow, I had no idea, it was the first time I used it. Therefore I did so many mistakes with the syntax, because I never used it, so for me it's a cool thing to explore stuff. That's what I like about streaming. Because when you do YouTube videos, then the stuff sometimes has to be prepared, right? You have to really come up and dive into the topic up front. So, but I think here we are actually through already. So we did a lot. We did a lot on content projection. We did loading, different triggers, different on triggers on defer, different placeholders, and the when. So I think that was a cool stream. And let's see now. Now I have to go and clean the apartment. Sucks, but yeah, it is what it is. So maybe I will stream later today. Let's see. But if I would stream, then maybe some parts about the book I wrote, maybe some signal overview. For the transform pipe in Angular. Angular recently dropped a new pipe. And not a new pipe, but I think basically now what you can do, that's also a feature that I just read about and haven't explored it, That would actually be pretty cool. I think here you can now do something like transform and then basically pass in your function. And I want to explore what the use cases of that are, because that could be pretty cool, especially if you have... I think Angular also has some built-in transform functions now. Yeah, maybe we do that and on the next stream, this transform. That could be something cool, could be worth exploring. Because I can already see some use cases, especially also as a UI component library author. You can see how this could, yeah, how we could use it for a couple of things, especially when you work with values and stuff. Like if you have a control value accessor and you accept the values, which are string values, but you also want to handle numbers, maybe sometimes you need to convert it, and with those pipes you could do it easily. So, yeah. Okay, so that's actually everything. Now I really have to go and clean the apartment. What was the number of libs and apps that you worked with at most? How do you mean? You mean like, for example, Angular, and then which other libs I usually use in my package JSON? Is that in a single code base? Aha. So I cannot tell you like the correct number, but generally what I always try to use, let's say, an exception libs. Aha. You mean like how many yeah, okay, I get it. So you're speaking about an NX monorepo and how many libraries and how many projects. So in a monorepo, it was not so big. It was like, I think, around 10 libs or something. But that's also because we didn't have like monorepo setups for a long time, and still it transitioned. Like many of my clients are transitioning now to the monorepo setup. But I've worked in at clients where I basically have, now the UI library that I'm doing is consumed by around 200 spas. So it's pretty huge, and we have, I don't know how many libraries. So we have UI libraries, core libraries, and they also have like additional business libraries, business logic libraries. I would say they have around 200 spas and around 50 to 100 libraries or something. I would say something like that. So it's a pretty huge environment where we work there. And yeah, there we have a lot. If you have a company of that size, you will enter like some very interesting cases, right? Because where a monorepo would definitely make sense. Because we now have like a lot, or we have to put in a lot of effort to keep everybody up to date. Like if you release something, that the whole company basically follows the latest features and the latest versions and this kind of things. And we also had some sort of kind of like Google approach where we don't really do Semware. So with Semware you would say, I as a library author publish something, and then the spas pull it, right? But we had this approach of a dependency propagator where basically at night the latest version of each library gets actively pushed inside your repository. And that was easier for some reasons, but it also introduced a lot of complexity. But that's an interesting thing. And then also with a monorepo, of course, it's always hard when Angular 17 now comes out. Until you have to find the perfect timing for your library to upgrade, because if you don't do these breaking changes, you cannot just go to 17 and then just, because maybe you break all the consumers that are on 16. So you basically have to make sure that the consumers first go to 17, consume your 16 library, and then you go with the library, right? And with a monorepo, this could all be solved because you just move the company in one go, like overnight or something. You move the whole company to Angular 17. That would be the idea. But yeah. Yeah, so enterprise, we have like seen quite some things, like really big things. That's interesting. But also, like, then the other thing is we try to basically move one of our clients to monorepo, but it's also not so easy because many people are also afraid of monorepo and doing the bigger steps into monorepo. So what I've seen now in some companies is that they do like partial migration to monorepo. So they start with small monorepos, and then they have their monorepo for their case, which is business encapsulated, but they still have an npm based approach. So they sometimes even have publishable libraries inside their monorepo, so that they still publish it out to npm, but they still have it in monorepo for their stuff. So, which is also an interesting approach. And yeah, there are interesting things. Because are you also working with monorepo, Ilva? And also this monorepo discussion was also one of the reasons why I started to create NX release actually. So there is this repository, NX release, I also wrote about it, which basically gives you the possibility to be in a monorepo but still publish out npm libraries, right? So this is also for open source. This can be used to basically configure like fully automated release with open source libraries and NX monorepo. So you could theoretically think of like, you have multiple open source libraries. I, for example, have like, I don't know, 7 or 10 or 12, I don't remember, but I have multiple Angular libraries, and I could basically move them all into monorepo and then migrate them all now to Angular 17 if I would have them in a monorepo, right? But then I need to publish them separately out. And there are multiple ways to go about this. It's like a whole topic in itself. I have 2 blog posts about that, and this NX release, which basically configures this for monorepos, which is pretty cool. But the cool thing is, I had a call on, when was it? This week, last Thursday, I had a call with James from Narwhal, and they are now working on an official NX release version, which basically aims to do something like this, maybe a bit less for the moment, but in the future maybe something like this, and it could replace NX release. That would be cool. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm speaking about maybe a bit too much. Okay, but yeah, that's maybe because I have to clean the apartment. So yeah, now then let's wrap up the stream, and yeah, thanks for joining, and let's see, maybe later or then in the next couple of days I plan on doing another stream. Let's see. And yeah, have a nice day so far, and hope to see you soon. And Viva Bellingham. That's a good closing word. Viva Bellingham. Bye bye.
To recall what we meant, all the words you never said, all the questions in my head, 'cause you tried.